But in this session, we're going to hear from the folks that are doing really well in this space, because I know all of us want to be doing really well, and ultimately really just providing all kinds of value. So we have, just to briefly introduce the folks, we have Alex Moore coming from Boomerang. Some Boomerang lovers out here? Yeah?
Thank you.
I'm still paying for it. I can get you on stage every year, and I still pay for the account. It's a fantastic product. Some of the best basic CRM stuff you can kind of do, get those emails to come back to you. No folks haven't written to you, haven't gotten back in a certain amount of time, et cetera. We have Dmitri Leonov from Sanebox, also another fantastic product in the space. And you guys did some really great things with just sort of the way you've done freemium and trials. I've always found kind of inspiring. They've kept raising their prices, and somehow it's worked. Or at least he's still on the stage here. So you can hear about that, which is kind of cool. And we have Andrew. You were slightly newer to the space. When did you guys get involved in all this with Boxer?
Yeah, so we started as Taskbox back in June of 2012.
2012.
So yeah, it's been a few years now.
And so Dmitri, you were what, 2010, 11? 10. And you were 2010 as well. Yeah. So this is the old guard, but still up here. This is kind of awesome. 2008, sold to Return Path. We're going to call on this gentleman here to talk about one of the various business models as well, because there's lots of different ways that you can do things to help your users and make a living in this space. But what we're going to start off with doing here is give you a little bit of background on what are these, not so much really what their products are, but kind of how do they make money in this. I do want you to learn just a little bit about, of course, what they do, because that's why they're on stage. They need to make money. So that's why they're all here. But also, just to really understand these different business models. So get ready for some questions that you want to ask later about different business model, different timing, anchor prices, whatever, all that kind of stuff, because these are your guys. So let me just, I'll start with you, Alex. Is that good for you?
Sure.
All right. I will hand you a clicker. And 1 second here. There you go.
Thank you. So as Jared said, I'm Alex. I'm the CEO of Baydin. We make a whole lot of stuff. We make Inbox Pause, which is a pause button for your email. We make Boomerang Calendar, which is like a magical meeting scheduling assistant. We make the Email Game, which is a gamified email client to help you plow through your email. But the product that we're best known for, the one that's on my shirt, is Boomerang. And way back in 2010, we created the first snooze button in email, which worked really well for us. And we also added a bunch of other really cool superpowers to Gmail. So we added a send later button, so you could write an email now, but send all of your email on Wednesday when it's email day. Or you could add a read receipt to your email, which is a non-creepy way to boost your response rates by about 25%. You can snooze messages, or you can use my favorite feature, which is a way to get a notification if someone doesn't respond to your email. So if you don't answer my email, I'm practically impossible to get rid of. Way back in 2010 when we were getting started, we got a lot of folks who said, oh, no one will pay for email. And I'm happy to say that we've proven them resoundingly wrong. Depending on how the next couple of days go, I'm hoping we will hit the 3 million annual run rate mark this month. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you.
How much did you guys raise, Alex?
$400,000.
Amazing.
So thank you. So we do a freemium SaaS model. You can sign up for free. You can use the product for free as long as you like. If you start to use it more and more, we start to nag you and ask you to pay us. And our nag screens go from very gentle to more forceful to eventually a limerick that says you have to pay us or you can't use the service anymore. We often get limericks in response, which is really great.
Do you extend the trial?
Where's that slide?
We have done that a couple of times. I should have put it in here. If you don't buy, we'll starve and then die. So as you can tell, we're a little bit more on the consumer, prosumer, small business, and groups and side enterprises end of things. Virtually all of our revenue is self-service. You can click that big green Boomerang for Teams button, and you can you can sign up without talking to us for, I think, up to 500 seats. Which is great. We've had people, in the hundreds of seats who we get an email and it's like, whoa, lots of money, and we're really happy. So we're living the dream a little bit in that sense. I know we're leaving some money on the table by not moving toward the enterprise, and I'm looking forward to discussing with these guys how they've pulled it off.
Great. Thanks, Alex. I want to find that limerick, but let's move on to Dmitri here. 1 second. There you go.
Thank you. So I'm Dmitri, and I'm a co-founder at Sanebox. And what we do is make email work for you, something we came up with a while back. And of course, last week when Google's inbox came out, that's the tagline they used.
So they took your features, Alex, and your
Exactly,
tagline, right?
So what we do is, at the core, where we started in 2010, we did one thing, and that was smart filtering. So we look at your past interactions with your inbox, only the headers, never the body, and move unimportant stuff out into a separate folder and summarize it in a digest once a day. Then we built a bunch of other features, some of which are also stolen from Boomerang. So you can snooze emails, you can unsubscribe by dragging an email to a black hole folder, reply tracking, move attachments to Dropbox, etc. So this works on any provider, any client, any device, because all of our features are basically folders that live on the server. So our pricing model is very boring and old school. So we do a 14-day free trial and 3 pricing plans. And the way, is this a good time to start talking about kind of how we got there, or is this, no? So if this slide was 2 years ago, it would have been a 30-day trial. And so the thing that we learned by shortening the trial, we actually increased our conversion rate. And the real benefit is that allowed us to optimize our user acquisition twice as fast, right? So we know within 14 days if something worked or not. So I would strongly recommend shortening your trials. In fact, I'm thinking now to shorten it to 7 days just to see what would happen. And as far as 3 pricing plans, so we used to have one, $5 or $5 a month, $55 a year. And around that time, I read a great book, which I think everyone should read, Predictably Irrational, kind of textbook on pricing strategy. And so what we did is 3 pricing plans, low, medium, high, and the high is just ridiculous, right? Like we never thought anybody would pay $300 for a product. And to this day, I think between 8 and 10% go for that, which is just insane.
Insane.
And the lesson there is, and I think this is kind of the theme for us, is give people the opportunity to pay you money, right? If they can't do it, they won't. And so that's why we actually chose to not have a free plan and to kind of push everybody into a subscription. And then we do also have a business plans as well, which are even more expensive. But certainly there are volume discounts that large organizations expect.
Cool. Thanks, Dmitri. I'm going to put up my wire info in just a second on the screen. Hold on.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah, it's these. Sorry about that. View full screen. There you go.
Good, thanks. So I'm Andrew. I am the CEO and founder at Boxer. We're an advanced mobile email client for iOS and Android phones and tablets. I thought maybe to wake everybody up a little bit, we've got the Boxer theme going in the background, so if you can name that Rocky, if you're able to see it, feel free to shout out which Rocky this is. Anybody know? Rocky 1, that's right.
Do you get a free subscription for that?
Absolutely, to Sanebox, right? I'm not sure if I've got the clicker. Is it this one? Great. Anybody? Rocky? 4, there you go. Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, just very quickly what Boxer does and kind of where we feel like our place is in the market. I think historically there's been this kind of divide of, are you an enterprise company or are you a consumer company? And kind of with the BYOD movement, and particularly the way that people are acquiring software on mobile, we really feel like that shift or that division is over. And so Boxer really views our role as kind of providing this bridge of great consumer experience, kind of the same type of interface, the same type of kind of smooth motion that you would expect from a consumer application like a Facebook or Twitter, but combining that as well with kind of enterprise-grade features and security. So on the consumer side, we've added over 30 enhanced features, most of which we also copied from Boomerang. Not really. What really has been important for us is kind of learning that we should try not to be very prescriptive in email. I think that's been one of our big lessons learned, that providing tools and allowing users to adapt the tools to match their existing workflow is a lot more effective than trying to teach everyone the right way to do email. So that's been a big learning experience for us and certainly has helped us along the way. So on the enterprise side, I think what we've really strived for here is to be an application that not only do consumers want to download, that they actively seek out from the app stores and so forth, but that IT administrators are happy to allow them to use. So that means things like having Exchange over ActiveSync with full policy enforcement. It means partnering with the MDM providers to provide a secure environment for managing those devices. And it means doing some of the unsexy work for things like 256-bit encryption for data at rest and so forth. These aren't the features that most consumers buy. These are the features that IT requires. And so we really look at this as an opportunity to provide value to large enterprise. But in terms of pricing, and I think that's part of what we're here to talk about is just monetization. Oh, I missed one. Anybody? Rocky? This is my favorite one. Can you see it? That's Hulk Hogan in a headlock, if you can't see it. Rocky 3, that's right. And then also Rocky 3, Clubber Lang. So the pricing strategy for us, I think as we see things, consumers kind of fall into two camps. Those that want to pay nothing for software and are happy to kind of be the product. And those who absolutely are willing to pay for software and want to pay for software. And so our strategy for the consumer application has been to provide both. And to date, that free application is one that we really use as a funnel to our paid application, which is a $9.99 one-time download. And it's crippled in some ways with various feature blocks and so forth around multiple accounts or ActiveSync integration and so forth. But really, for us, the consumer monetization is kind of the tip of the iceberg. We think the real value here is to enterprise. And so from the very beginning, that's always been the strategy for Boxer is kind of this consumer acquisition and building a product that end users absolutely love, but really monetizing at the enterprise through a subscription model. And for us, that really revolves around two big things, mobile device management and enterprise integrations for things like Salesforce, Workday, ServiceNow, surfacing non-email content at that point of attention. So I guess we'll dive into that a little bit more, but that's the high-level overview for our pricing strategy.
Cool.
Thanks.
Just get one more slide up here. Making money in Boomerang. Got it, okay. Actually, if you could switch over to the video, that would be great, so the folks over here can see. And by the way, we got some Microsoft folks here. You guys remember a product called Email Snooze that Microsoft came out with, don't you? Sometime well before you guys, but you know that too. There were so many products that used that word way before, but they were the first to do it server side. So I give you credit because it's really not that useful in the client because it's still everywhere else, like on your phone. So kudos to you. You're the first one I paid money for. And as for paying money, you guys take money at different places in the cycle. So your freemium, Dmitri, you guys you're sort of freemium, but not really because you take the credit card up front.
Oh, we do not.
So in other words, you really just pay.
We're free trial.
Yeah. So you get the money. So we got freemium. We've got free trial, and you guys are. How would you describe yourselves? You're subscription, but freemium really, or?
Yeah. So on the enterprise side, we're a pure SaaS model.
Okay.
And then on the consumer side, it's a perpetual license.
Okay. So talk about why you guys each chose those models and why you've stuck with them. I changed my model at a Wayfind a couple times. I'm curious to hear why you stuck with what you have. You can just go through, Alex.
Sure. Well, to some extent, it's been because it worked. We never made Boomerang free. We always advertised it as paid. And the first way we did that was we had a "Pay what you feel is fair" button on the homepage. So you could buy a voluntary subscription to Boomerang. You didn't have to, but if you did, cool, you'd get a free year, or not a free year. Sorry, you'd get a paid year. And so what we did when we set up our pricing is we took a histogram of what people had paid us for a year. We found the two highest spikes, and that was what we set our plans at. And it kind of worked well. We haven't made a whole lot of changes since. We saw the freemium model as attractive for a couple of reasons. One is because we do get a lot of distribution from free users who tweet about it, who share that they're using Boomerang, who tell their friends. And we didn't want to lose that. We really wanted to keep those people as evangelists for us and help us grow customer on the acquisition side. The only thing we've changed is we did add an also insanely priced plan, and that's worked well. We don't have anything like 8% of people picking to pay us $500 a year, but we do have a small percentage, and it's significantly boosted the number of people who pay us for the second the middle plan.
Yeah. So you have some context around 2010. That was right around after 37 Signals had done all their research and announced about their freemium model and their anchor pricing. And I'm guessing you guys were kind of following a lot of that. The whole startup community was following that. And there's been a backlash where there's a lot fewer people still doing freemium because it didn't work for most people. It certainly didn't work for us. And you guys, from the beginning, were always a paid trial. So please talk to that.
Yeah, we've been on a kind of on a kick against freemium for a while, and it's great to see that a lot of companies have been abandoning their free plans, which I think is awesome for the internet. So for us, it was actually kind of a necessity. We have a non-zero cost of the SaaS service, so we couldn't do it for free. So as a result, we started with one simple plan, as I mentioned before. And over time, we saw our customers told us that some of them would be happily paying us a lot more money. They were just telling us they would get a lot more value than $5. So we should give them the opportunity to give us more money. So that's what we did.
Big of you.
Yeah, we aim to please.
Right.
And the thing with the thing with when we take the money, so we actually experimented with asking for a credit card up front, and it didn't work. Right? It just not. I'm sure if it's a more established, bigger brand name, that works for them, but it didn't work for us. So what we do is we give you two weeks, and we pretty aggressively start marketing to you or emailing you we send you 3 emails, and they're personalized to how you're using the product, but they're getting more and more persistent with time. And I think one lesson here that we've learned is every month somebody complains, oh, you guys send too much email, you're supposed to be an anti-email company, what are you doing? And for every one of those people, there are 100 who happily clicked on that link and went to buy us. So that's the other lesson. Don't be shy. The way I like to think about the free trial is you're basically giving your product away for free, right? The product is worth a lot of money. You're doing your customers a huge favor by not charging them up front. So, get everything you can out of that.
Milk your customer. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I think our perspective on kind of marketing and reminders has been similar, right? That along the way, there are certainly the vocal minority of people who, and probably this room is probably awfully sensitive to email marketing messages. I know I personally don't like them. They do work, and they're necessary to kind of completing folks through the funnel. For us, our pricing strategy has been pretty consistent from the beginning. Boxer was a paid application first. We've experimented with various price points, kind of moved all over the place. And today, on the paid application, we really optimize for revenue through the App Store. So we've done various price discounts, we've done various promotions, but for the consumer application, that $9.99 price tag that we're currently at, I think we're actually discounted on iOS today, but that $9.99 price tag ended up being kind of the sweet spot for us. Price testing for mobile applications can be pretty tough to do, and testing in general is a little bit harder to do than it is on web. But I think we've finally settled. I think one of the big things that happens in mobile is as you do some of that price testing and you see the impact it has on your store rankings, it's tough to tell over time, was it the price drop that caused the decrease in rankings, or was it the decrease in rankings that resulted in fewer downloads? And so I think one of the lessons learned for us is you've got to let that sit for a while and let it bake for a while to really draw any serious conclusions. But again, for us, the consumer side of this is really just more about taking what we believe is an appropriate value for the product that we're providing. Certainly, we could get a lot more downloads and if we only went with a free application. But we think that there's value there for folks, and certainly we think there's kind of money on the table that folks are willing to pay for that experience. But we think the real value is in the enterprise side. So the way that Boxer monetizes with enterprise is really about selling engagement back to enterprise. We know that the inbox is kind of the main attention hub for everyone. It's that 6-minute habit that once every 6 minutes we're going to pull our cell phones out of our pockets. We're going to open up our applications, and the killer application is email. So leveraging that attention stream, that habitual checking of email to actually surface non-email content has a lot of value in driving engagement back in some of these business process automation systems. And those business process automation systems, number one pain point is not lack of features. No one ever said Salesforce doesn't have enough buttons. The challenge for them is engagement and getting people to actually use the product regularly. So we think there's a real opportunity there in selling that attention stream and selling that engagement back to enterprise and driving real ROI in these other systems they've already invested in.
I like how you use email as a gateway drug. That makes sense. So, one thing I should point out about some of their different business models, and also how that's different from some of these much larger companies here, like the Googles and Microsofts. So Alex, you mentioned you raised $400,000. Dimitri, did you all raise money at all?
No, we're self-funded.
So they are self-funded, and you guys raised a bit more.
Yeah, about 4 million.
4 million. So you can just tell from those numbers, which are 0 to 4 to multiplying that by 10 in terms of scale, that they can do different things with their business models. And so what's interesting, you mentioned you're on a $3 million a year run rate, and now you actually have a product where you don't charge. So you're sort of considering a different model. Like Dmitri always had to make money. We on the Wayfind side, we raised somewhere in the middle of those, and we needed to make money from the beginning too. So I'm curious, Alex, to hear your perspective. Now that you have a little bit of a safety net, you've decided to just try to build the audience, which was always the model we thought in sort of the venture capital world. Just get enough people there, and then you'll make money, just like Mailbox did. And you guys are going to sell for $100 million soon, so don't worry, Andrew. But I'm curious, like Alex, you've switched to that. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we don't charge for our mobile app right now. And we don't charge for actually anything but Boomerang. Some of that's laziness. I think Boomerang Calendar would make a significant amount of money if we turned on pricing. But we don't have, not laziness, I guess lack of resources. So I'd love to, if any of you guys have some engineers who you're not recruiting, or if any of you Microsoft guys want a new home, we're hiring. Sorry, that was rude for the hosts. But I think on mobile, the thing for us has really been that it's very hard to make a mobile mail client that retains users. And you have to have a lot of things done in order to get people to switch to your mobile mail client for the thing they use their phone most for. And I think up until a few months ago, I mentioned in a question earlier that until we fixed about 70 rendering issues, we weren't retaining users. So I don't think necessarily it's that we're switching business models so much as it is that until we have a product that people really, really stick with, we don't see that making, charging people money to use it is really the right path forward.
Gotcha. And so to speak, you raised $4 million, and you changed your model a little bit from, it seemed to me, and I could be wrong, that you were, at least in the beginning, sort of saying, we're a productivity tool, task management, productivity, that kind of thing. And now you're really moving toward the enterprise side, and that's where you're making money. Could you talk about both the positioning and the thinking around that shift or that positioning?
Yeah, so I think when we were here 2 years ago and kind of demoed Taskbox, there was definitely a larger emphasis on task management specifically, and task management on top of email. And I think that became a very popular topic. Paul Graham wrote his essay, and lots of interest kind of came into this space. And you saw a lot of people kind of getting very prescriptive about how you should do email. And we learned very early that that's a great way to have a very loyal and very small user population when you tell people that they should stop doing what they've been doing for the past 15 years and instead adopt your religion. And so what we really did with the relaunch as Boxer wasn't change kind of our philosophy, but just the way that we beat people over the head with it, right? So when we were Taskbox, it was, we are task-oriented, you should organize your inbox, you should add priorities, this is how you should stack things. All that same functionality is still available in Boxer, but it's a feature. It's not the core of the application. And I think what you're seeing now is a trend towards kind of our initial philosophy. Eric from Google mentioned earlier today that the inbox is about more than email. That's the way we've always seen it. That really what the inbox is about is attention. That ultimately users want one stream of attention. They don't want 75 different inboxes, whether it's their Asana inbox or their email inbox or their Basecamp inbox or whatever it might be. Kind of this idea that I just want one place to look at for everyone who's trying to get a hold of me and asking me to do something. So the application to things like Salesforce or some of these other systems is always on the radar. We viewed that as a subset of tasks originally. We just stopped calling them tasks, right? Because at the end of the day, your inbox might be a task list. As Paul Graham put it, your inbox is a task list that other people can add things to. But people, the average real estate agent or plumber doesn't view it that way. They think their task list is the thing that's taped to their refrigerator that says get milk on the way home. They think that their inbox is their inbox. And so long as you kind of continue to push this message of your inbox is a task list, you're pushing a rope. Right?
Can I ask a question? Just, we talked about different models and you put up some numbers over there. Couch this however you want, but what do you think of as sort of, in a given year, what you make from an individual user? What's typically what you think you make from a typical user?
$100.
$100? Typically.
Come back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, the unit economics are still kind of to be determined. We're still in the building phase. These guys have been at this a lot longer and probably have a more mature product. But for us, we're out after those first enterprise lighthouse accounts. So there's like a huge division between what's the average consumer look like for us versus what does the average enterprise customer look like for us.
So what would that delta be, you think? You can just guess.
I mean, it's 50x, right? A consumer, the way we monetize consumers ultimately is not where we think the real value is, right? And I mean, you can just look at, we always thought about kind of business process automation or kind of generically business software as being on kind of a scale or a spectrum from everyone uses it and it's very inexpensive per seat to only a special group of people use it and it's very expensive per seat. So you've got Salesforce and CRMs as the crown jewels at $120 to $150 a user. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got things like email or cloud storage that might be $5 a user, right? And so the question is, where do you live on that spectrum? And for us, we think we're driving kind of engagement across that spectrum. So we're helping Box get more engagement for that $5 per seat license, and we're helping Salesforce to get more engagement for that $125 per seat.
So did I read, was it $10 once for some people, and then?
So the consumer download just straight through the App Store for the Pro application is a one-time download for $9.99.
Yep.
And then enterprise licensing ranges anywhere from $5 to $25 per user based on kind of that integration story.
Per month?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so that puts you in this $200 to $300 range.
Yeah, that's right.
And you guys, I'm guessing, are like the 150 or 100, some kind of in that 100 to 200 range?
Well, including free users, about $20 a year.
Including free users. I see what you're saying because you have a freemium model. So that does change things. But it's interesting just to understand the unit economics here of if you are, most of us, at least initially, we think, oh, wow, 1 million people are going to download it and we're going to make a lot of money. But in the million, since it usually doesn't get to be 1 million, at $10, that's very different economics per year, or actually even just once versus 100. And it's just interesting to think about how mobile models are different than the subscription model and kind of how you can actually make money from it. So those are some of the different models. Josh, Bear, if I could could you speak to some of the unit economics that are involved maybe in the data side of this and even just talk what the data model looks like with Other Inbox?
Sure. So, so with Other Inbox, we launched in about 2000, I guess we probably launched in 2009, and I'd come from the email marketing background, so I thought there might have been some kind of a freemium model there, but our focus long term was really always on finding a way to monetize the data within the email without taking advantage of any of the users. And so, and then it turned out, as we kind of got to critical mass on the size of the user base, I had known Return Path for quite a long time and worked with them quite a bit, and it really made sense at that time. It was clear that they could take this model we had and take it to market much more quickly and really realize that vision. And so in that way, what we do is we take the Other Inbox user base, which is now millions of users, and use it as an anonymous panel. So we don't ever disclose any information about any one user, but we can look across all those users and gain a lot of insights into what's happening with email that's really valuable to people that send it. And so the beginning of that is understanding my own emails better, the ones that I send. So if you send emails, you can put a pixel in there, and you can know a rough approximation of how many people open it. But even that we know isn't really true because images get blocked and different things happen, or the way different places that you read it. And so with having access to the actual inbox, we know exactly how many people really opened it and how many deleted it and how many forwarded it to a friend and the order that they did things. We know if they went to the spam folder and they moved it back to the inbox, or if it went to the inbox and they moved it to the spam folder, and other things that you wouldn't normally be able to see. And also we can do that across different providers who don't always give that kind of transparency. Some providers tell you when there's a complaint and who complained, but others don't. What became even more interesting was being able to see the emails that your competitors send. So I know about all the emails I send, but if I'm just pulling random examples, if I'm Best Buy, then it might be really interesting to know about the consumer electronics emails that Amazon sends or that Fry's sends, and knowing how much do they send? Do they send more email than me? Do they send less? Do they get better deliverability or better engagement? What subject lines work the best? Things that you'd never really imagine you'd be able to see, but because of this insight, you could share. And so that turned out to be very, very valuable. And that's turned into a fantastic new business line for ReturnPath, which they're continuing to grow. Now, kind of the same thing applies to receipt data. Again, we can parse receipts, and you might not know, we don't have to share anything about what you bought, but we know we can go to Macy's or Best Buy or someone else and say, hey, here's what your customers are buying. And that's really interesting to them. And now I know as far as the continuing business model, we've built a number of our own products, which then allow us to do this. But then we also go partner with other email providers, and I don't think we're currently having a data feed from any of the people up on the stage, but it's people like that and others that we've talked to where we can, even if we don't necessarily own the product, pull in data from other places and do this same kind of anonymization and monetization out of it.
I'm going to ask you a hard question, Josh. We're talking about unit economics, $10, $100, a few $100 a year, those kinds of things. How many customers' data or email boxes does one need to be processing before it starts getting into that, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000 a month source of revenue?
Sure. I don't think there's not a precise answer to this, and it's actually it's really more of like, because of the way that there's two approaches to how you could do this. You could try to have everybody, like I'm going to try to get every mailbox on the internet, which is not possible, so that's not what we do. Or you could try to have a representative sample. And so at that point, once it's all about getting a critical mass, a large enough sample that it's representative. And once you have that, there's actually not nearly as much incremental value to other users unless you're targeting maybe specific things like users from a certain country, so you have a representative sample there or things like that. And so I believe, and Dave Wilby's in the back, he may be able to throw out some other interesting data points or correct me, but I believe it starts to get interesting around 250,000 users. So at that point, if you're just trying to be general across all the US and you had 250,000 users in the US, that would be pretty interesting. Now, if you want to be able to tell the difference between Gmail and Hotmail, you need 250,000 Gmail users and 250,000 Outlook users. Now, that still isn't, I don't think anybody's satisfied with 250. When you start talking about a few million users, you're in a really good spot. That's a good place to be, and now the incremental value of additional users is actually probably pretty low. Dave, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that's about right. So for email deliverability, it's about 220, 230,000 per ISP, but then everybody starts asking granular questions like, so what is it on this email from this sender on this ISP? You suddenly find yourself, you've got to have a panel around about 4 or 5 million before it starts to get really economically interesting.
So you said 250,000 was the starting point, gets up to 4 or 5 million to get really interesting. And I know in general, the types of places over the past few years that we've been more interested now is, again, geography specific. So, okay, we have customers in Germany. We want more Germany addresses so that we can do a better job there.
So those of you that have like a Japanese-focused email startup or Iceland or whatever, something different, talk to ReturnPath, right?
Yes.
Cool.
I will throw one benchmark out there for, and we may not have been an interesting demographic, but when we had about 500,000 users, the quote we got was about 10 cents per user per year.
10 cents per user, which is different than the $20 per user a year you were mentioning to me a minute ago.
Right, exactly.
So a little different. So there's different models out there, and it's really important to think about it. One that I'm kind of curious about, I know you guys have all had different successes with enterprise. I know it's not been your thing, Alex. I know, Dmitri, it's been some of your business, and Andrew, that's a bit more of your focus. Andrew, could you maybe talk about some of the successes you've seen or some of your theories around the way you can actually succeed in enterprise? I did not do a good job with that. I found that the things took too long, and they didn't necessarily get there. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I think, generally speaking, the harder arguments to make into enterprise are time savings arguments. And so if your value proposition into a large account and you're speaking to a CIO or you're speaking to a business unit lead, and your initial proposition is, well, I'm going to save these users X amount of hours per year, and therefore these people's salaries are this much, and therefore this is worth this many dollars to you. And I look at that very skeptically myself, and we see the same thing from enterprise customers who basically say, yeah, but if I give back these employees another hour a day, does that necessarily mean that they're going to then become an hour more productive, or are they just going to find a way to like surf the internet or in some other mindless way kind of burn that amount of time? And so I think time savings arguments are not super effective. I think the closer you can get to real tangible ROI, and usually that's measured in, can I drive more sales or can I save you money? Those are the areas that I think are the strongest arguments. So Cirrus Insights had a ton of success in this space. And I think a lot of people, CRM is an obvious use case, because if you can just show them, yes, I'm going to make your salespeople more productive, and here's the amount of data that was coming into the system beforehand, here's the amount of data that was coming in after, they see very tangible results there. And there are already budgets established for this, right? So as you kind of go down the value chain, then it becomes more difficult.
So has anybody had success selling productivity into the enterprise, like lots of volume seats? I know you guys have had maybe medium, right?
Well, certainly. I mean, I think it depends how you define it. I think productivity often, people...
Well, take the word sales off the equation, and I'm curious who has had success.
Yeah, so I think, if you think about productivity as task management or project management, then it's an extremely fragmented market with lots of kind of individual groups buying into solutions and not a whole lot of broad adoption. But I think if you think about productivity in terms of the way Microsoft has traditionally thought about productivity, boy, they've had a whole lot of success selling all of us kind of the traditional word processing plus PowerPoint plus Excel. So I think, what's that?
Outlook is productivity.
That's exactly right. So I think for us, what is still being kind of felt out is, what does productivity on mobile mean? At least for us, that's a big part of the question, because mobile productivity probably doesn't mean creating spreadsheets, but mobile productivity absolutely does mean a field sales rep updating his forecast, or a field consultant or a field engineer updating project specs. So field productivity might end up actually meaning taking a picture with your smartphone and uploading that to the project management software, which isn't the same category of software that we traditionally thought of as productivity. Right?
Sure.
So for us, the challenge we run into is inevitably we sit at the table with the CIO. Productivity does not make CIO's job easier. In fact, it makes it harder. So, and his job is to say no. So please, if you can avoid selling to the CIO, by all means do that, right? If you can sell to the CMO and not interface with the CIO, it's perfect. The success we've had is when a senior executive makes the decision and tells the CIO, hey, you have to say yes to this. If it's coming from kind of mid-level or VP level, it's much harder to sell.
Does part of that have to do with the fact that you're handling their most sensitive jewels?
That's the main part, yes.
I think one other pattern that we've seen that's been interesting is an increasing emphasis within large enterprise on user experience. So even coming from IT, which wasn't something that I saw in my own career 5 or 10 years ago. You didn't have a lot of CIOs speaking on panels talking about how they have to provide more beautiful software experiences. But now in large accounts, we often see a center of excellence around user experience. And they're looking across all software and trying to figure out how do we provide something that is going to be more useful. And it's interesting because some of the largest organizations that we talk to view this as a recruiting tool, which was completely kind of a surprise to me, that they look at this and say, look, the next generation of students that are coming out, we've got to hire the next 300,000 employees, and we're not going to do that if all of our software is old and clunky, right? We need to be providing experiences that are of the same quality and the same level that they're used to using in kind of consumer aspects, within social networks and so forth. So I think design and user experience has taken on a whole new kind of importance within enterprise. I don't know that they've yet quantified how much that's worth, right? They're actively looking for a great experience, but how much is it worth, I think is still a question to be answered.
Cool. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time, and I know that you guys want to make some money. So if we could pass the mic around a little bit, those of you that have questions for this fine panel. I'll wait a moment. They're being real honest up here. We really appreciate that, the candor.
So you guys are successful. What kind of retention rates do you see?
Good ones. The biggest.
I'd say good.
Yeah, good to great.
Very good.
No, I think the challenge for anybody who's doing what we're doing, where it's individual credit cards, you got two big things that you have to deal with. One is credit card churn, so your credit cards get declined. That's our number one driver of churn. Second driver of churn is if someone changes their email address, they necessarily can't use Boomerang with the same old email address. One of our large customers got acquired by Microsoft, and so long, guys. So that's, I'd say, the two biggest drivers for us. We don't lose very many folks because they say I was using this and then I'm not anymore. That's really not a big driver for us.
Yeah, same for us. Moving over to Stripe has been a huge help in reducing credit card
From
churn.
what? What did you move from?
PIN payments, Spreedly.
Okay.
Terrible.
It's amazing that just some payment providers just work better, and you learn, like, if you use this one, more of your cards get accepted.
Right.
Cool.
But that's by far. So I think our churn is 1.5% a month, which is, and the vast majority of that is credit cards.
Yeah, so we don't talk about kind of the aggregate metrics, but I will say that kind of the benchmarks that we look at in mobile retention, WhatsApp is kind of the absolute best-in-class application out there with like 75% retention. We kind of benchmark ourselves against Twitter, which I think we're happy that we've closed in now on the same types of retention metrics that Twitter sees and publishes publicly, so you could kind of look those up. But I think one interesting kind of tidbit is that you would think that our paid application would just retain astronomically better than the free application because there are fewer features in the free application. And while that's true, what's interesting is if you look at the metrics for how many people actually pay for the application and then never successfully put their username and password in, or never even attempt to put in their username and password. It's an astounding thing that people will pay $10 and then never ever try to actually run the application. I think it was an interesting lesson for us. Our VP of product came from Zynga, and we actually bet a steak dinner on what percentage of our users would fall into this paid for the application and never used it category. I lost that bet. But I think the lesson learned there is that in some ways, mobile software is a bit different than kind of traditional desktop software or web software in that people view it almost the same way they view media, right? That for some category of users, they collect apps in the same way that they collect music or that they collect movies.
I collect email apps.
Yeah, right. So actually, our business model is just keep creating business or email apps and let Josh keep buying them.
Yeah. No, Andrew, I'm going to get that list from you afterwards, by the way.
Yeah, you bet. So yeah, I think that's an interesting kind of aside that you would expect that by charging, that would just dramatically impact that, and in some cases it doesn't.
More questions from the audience?
Vladimir here from Divana. Can you guys tell us some email products or apps you're using besides your own?
I'm super cagey with my email because for obvious reasons. So I don't use a whole lot of stuff that we don't make. I used the Wayfind for a while until it locked me out with the OAuth process.
It works.
Reportive and
Trade
Guessware.
$15 a month.
I use Reportive
Guessware?
also.
Well, now we have
Yes,
Reportive
where?
in the room, by the way.
Yeah, and we use Relate IQ and we use Sanebox.
Very cool. Other questions?
I have a question for.
Oh, sorry, you got the mic.
I have a question for Boomerang because you have a free version as well. We used to do that and found hardly any users ever converted from free to paid. Almost all of our paid users just immediately paid as soon as they came to us. What do you see there? Do you see many conversions from free to paid?
I'd say we're probably somewhere between what you guys saw and like what Evernote sees. We definitely have some folks who use it, come up to the limit, but don't quite cross it, and then a couple months later just go nuts with it. I'd say some of the time they have like an awakening. So they'll have the product installed, the button will be staring at them. They won't necessarily know what it does, but they won't uninstall it because you can use it every once in a while. Or maybe, I guess, they'll use it for like send later, and they'll use it like twice a month or something. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, wait, this Boomerang button, whoa, this is life-changing. And then they'll convert like a month and a half later. So we do see a decent amount of like long-lived free people who end up paying for sure. I don't have a number off the top of my head, but it's significant.
Hey, Emilio from OneBox.io. Alex, you already kind of answered this, but for the other two of you, how did you choose the specific price points?
It was a fair amount of trial and error. So we and as Jared mentioned, we actually increased our price over time. When we switched from the 1 plan to 3 plans, our cheapest one was significantly cheaper. And what we found is that seemed a little, not enough. So we've raised it to a more kind of a. I'd say a lot of what we do is textbook. So for example, we know that $99 is psychologically speaking, a very good price point to have. Anytime you go above that gets more difficult. And there's a ton of studies done on this. So we've done some testing. We've done a lot of just customer development and talking to folks. I wish I could say it was purely scientific, and we tested every possible combination, but we haven't.
Yeah, I think for us on the consumer side, I mentioned we did some testing and tested various price points over time, and then just kind of. I think our takeaway was we just needed to settle in on a price point we could stick with, aside from any promotions. I think in the App Store, you've got to always be open to kind of these price-adjusted promotions and so forth. But on the enterprise side, it's still early enough for us that we're really testing that with early customers. I think Dmitri made a good point earlier, which is when you're selling into enterprise, you have to anticipate that there is just expected discounting. We had one of our largest enterprise customers tell me that we had negotiated pricing. We got a full schedule together for if they bought anywhere between 1 license or 300,000 licenses. And somewhere in the middle or in the conversation, they said, well, we noticed that you didn't give us our first price break until we got to 500 seats. We're used to getting a price break at seat 1. And I said, okay, well, that's great. I'll give you a price break at seat 1, but if you only buy 10 seats, you're going to put me out of business because you're still going to act like a huge customer. So here's what you ask for. But I think the lesson learned there, the takeaway is you have to kind of build into that enterprise pricing model an expectation for discounting from the beginning.
Sorry, and really quick, your enterprise customers will look at your consumer pricing as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So make sure those are aligned.
Let me throw one more thing in there. One thing that we were lucky enough to get away with, we didn't really think about credit card processing fees when we set our price. We get a lot of emails who say, oh, well, if you only charge me $1 a month, I'd be happy to subscribe. They wouldn't, but if we did, we'd end up only taking home like 62 cents of that, and that's a huge hit. You can't, even if it's worse than it sounds because the credit card fees do need to factor in.
I'm happy to send you $1 in the mail every month. Interestingly, and this is something that's going to get me kicked out of this room, but since I've been working at this larger company, I've been involved in many pricing conversations, and all of them go like this. The legal team is like, this deal is too good to be true. This deal is too good to be true. Like, my point is, anytime you get to the point where you're dealing with contracts people that effectively are making 4 times your startup salary, if they're putting their time into this, and at the end of the day, the deal's for $1,000 a year, it doesn't make any sense. So they want to, in other words, at least in Skype.org, we want to have partnerships. We don't want to take advantage of people. And I'm not saying again that you should rip off companies or you should rip off Microsoft. My point is that they're paid to have these conversations with you, Andrew, that say we expect discounts, damn it. But they also want really great service from you, and they want to be your partner, and at least consider the idea that if it's going to be only a few $1,000s a year, it's probably not worth a bunch of legal person's time, and there's a very good chance that they'll pay more. And I've literally been in conversations with startups that have worked with our org, and they've told the startup specifically, we love working with you, just so you know you do not charge us enough. And that's because once you get to 6 figures, this stuff matters a lot, but people want to pay for value, and if you can find a way to equate your product with value, and I know that time isn't the easiest one of those metrics, but large companies will pay for you, and if they're paying you a few $100s a year, a few $1,000s a year, consider that you might be able to charge more if you're really dealing with these business development and legal folks. Next question.
Hey guys, Anthony from MailJet. Alex, I had a question for you actually about how I've been paying for Boomerang for a while now, so I don't know if you still do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you used to have a pop-up that would say like it equals the cost of a cup of coffee or something like that every month. And I always thought that was just a really interesting way to kind of frame it, to put some context around your product and the value that you can get out of it. Can you talk a little bit about how effective that was or ineffective and like some of the experimentation around that?
Oh man, if you'd asked like 2 years ago, I would have had the full like which paywall screens do the best for us. I don't have that in my head anymore. It does help for sure. We tested with and without it, and it definitely does help. I think you guys do. You guys may know this better than I do because you have cost of a snack.
We actually made our plans. The cheapest one is snack, middle one is lunch, and the highest one is dinner. And kind of a funny story. We had a customer somewhere in the Asia and I think he won a free account or something like that. And so he kept emailing us, expecting us to send him a dinner, like a real dinner. It took a long time for us to convince him.
Okay. So I guess the moral for pricing pages is the moral of the event. Copy Boomerang, you're saying? No. Take a look at all their pricing pages. That's what we all do. We all look around. There's so much psychology in this stuff, but please, please, please test. But more importantly, thank you guys. Thank you so much.